Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Dhankar ji, Director General IIPA, Mr. Tripathi, Mr. Sunil Gupta, Mr. Amitabh Ranjan, all the dignitaries seated in front of me, my very senior and revered former Minister Dr. Harshvardhan ji, who's also been instrumental in getting us Mr. Ashok Prasad over here, the grandson of Dr. Rajendra Prasad, as was being mentioned by Mr. Tripathi. Mr. Shekhar Datta hardly needs any introduction. Mr. Shatri has been a role model for many civil servants. Mr. Srinivas, senior officers, members of faculty, ladies and gentlemen. थोड़ा कठिन काम मुझे सौंपा गया क्योंकि मेरे हिस्से के फूल और मेरी पलकें भी त्रिपाठी जी ही बिछा चुके हैं. Like an early bird, he has stolen the welcome show. But nevertheless, it's my proud privilege to be here, sir, to speak in the honor of Vice President of India, who is many things rolled into one, an erudite scholar, an intellectual, an author, a legal luminary, a statesman, an orator. I can go on and on. And before I say anything, I think it's important for all of us to realize why holding this lecture named after Dr. Rajendra Prasad. B, why this subject, sharing of powers. And C, why it has been very thoughtfully decided that we would have none less than respected Dhankar ji to speak over this subject. Because the answer to part one is that it was none less than Dr. Rajendra Prasad who not only laid the foundation stone and did the inauguration of this institute, but also was one of the thoughts behind this concept and one of the founding fathers of the Indian Institute of Public Administration, which happens to be one of the earliest government institutes dedicated to this genre soon after independence in the 1950s. Secondly, also because it was Dr. Rajendra Prasad who had the responsibility of laying down the tradition of the Indian civil services and reincarnating the erstwhile Indian civil service into the Indian administrative service. And I don't know how many of us in this room realize that the very first Civil Services Day, which is now traditionally addressed by the Honorable Prime Minister, was actually addressed by Sardar Patel in his capacity as the Home Minister, because the DOPT then happened to be a part of the Home Ministry. And therefore, when I took over as chairman after the demise of our very revered Mr. Chaturvedi, who had been a guide and inspiration for us for several long decades before he passed away at the ripe old age of about 95 or so. The thought that occurred to us was that when we had so many memorial lectures, why not one dedicated to Dr. Rajendra Prasad? And therefore, we have this one, the second in the series, which we started very recently. And we have one of the progenies from the family to lend it its due credibility and due reverence. Second, sir, the subject of sharing of powers in the context of governance. All of us would appreciate that soon after Shri Narendra Modi took over as Prime Minister, one of the earliest dictums and the earliest mantras that he gave us was maximum governance, minimum government. I don't know how easy it is to define that. Sometimes it also sounds a little vague and ambiguous. But trying to put it in very simple terms, I think in a single sentence, perhaps it would mean a government which acts as a facilitator, but not as an intimidator. As Prime Minister once said, कि सरकार का अभाव भी नहीं और प्रभाव भी नहीं. You have a government which is there for you to bank upon, but not a government under which you feel pressurized. And for that, what are the prerequisites? Prerequisite A, transparency. B, citizen centricity, participation. C, accountability. And I'm glad to say in the last 9 years, several such measures have been adopted to achieve some of these objectives. We are almost now online. We have e-based functioning. There's a very little amount of human interface. And there is a very little room for or choice but not to be transparent. What's happening in such an order mode. As far as accountability is concerned, we have switched over to a vibrant portal called CP Gram, which didn't exist earlier. The result of that is that when this government came in 2014, the number of grievances filed every year across the country, from whole of the country, was just about 2 lakhs. Today it is 20 lakhs or so. And our grievance disposal rate has now crossed 1 lakh per month, which is not a small number. So it's a government which acts with citizen centricity at the same time with accountability to its maximum extent. We have also involved citizens as instruments of governance, not only in decision making, but also in the grievance redressal. Besides that, in the last few years, there have been measures to also increase the spectrum of governance and capacity building in governance. And to that extent, I'm also personally gratified that with the cooperation of Director General Mr. Tripathi and his team, we have been able to enlarge the role and the spectrum of IIPA. They are not only no longer training only the civil servants, but also now imparting capacity building courses to the elected people's representatives, be that the corporators, or the councillors, or the DDC members, because they too are equal participants. But what happened was earlier was that since they were not very much familiar with the nuances of governance, so most of the time would go waste in deciding which way the chair has to be placed and what was the protocol between the public representative and the civil service. We have tried to draw a very close synergy or samanvay, as you would put it. So considering all these things, the subject was decided for. And then the person to deliver this, I think none less than Mr. Dhankar. You would bear me out when I say that every morning, sometimes nowadays in afternoon, but seldom, you see him on the television struggling to teach us the lessons about the sharing of power. He is now become one of the best messengers guiding the nation, guiding different segments of governance, where the line is drawn for which segment of governance. Sometimes you find him giving us cues about the limits of the executive, the limits of the judiciary, and of course, every morning these days, the lines to be observed by the elected members of one. So a person who has himself been a parliamentarian, who has been closely associated with the legal machinery of this country, who's also been into administration and governance for a long, long time, being a governor himself, and who has seen all the shades of this subject, I think is the best person to tell us how to carry forward Prime Minister Modi's call or a clarion call for whole of government approach, which I would say in a single sentence, the whole of government approach, which accomplishes optimum sharing of powers or division of powers among the different segments of government. So, ladies and gentlemen, like you all, I too look forward to listen to him and carry home some wise words of wisdom and go back this evening wiser than before. Thank you.